for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start with a look at the day's headlines. Speaking to Japanese media ahead of his trip to Tokyo on Wednesday for three-way talks with Japan and China, President Moon Jae-in says he thinks the Inter-Korean summit will lay the groundwork for a successful North Korea-US summit. Lawmakers at South Korea's National Assembly have just a matter of hours to put aside their differences to normalise parliamentary affairs before the local elections in mid-June. Plus, Vladimir Putin is sworn in for a fourth term as Russia's president, opening another 6 years at the helm of the country where he's already been in power for almost 20 years. Our top story this morning, President Moon Jae-in has given an interview to a Japanese newspaper on issues surrounding the Korean Peninsula ahead of his trip to Tokyo on Wednesday for a three-way summit with Japan and China. Speaking to the Yomiuri Shimbun, the South Korean leader expressed his expectations for the North Korea-US summit and said Kim Jong-un's firm determination for his regime's complete denuclearization will be a positive base for a successful summit with President Trump. President Moon added that Japan will play an important role in fostering peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula and said North Korea-Japan talks should resume. He also said the North Korean leader had expressed a willingness to hold talks with Japan at any time. When speaking on the issue of Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during the Second World War and the widely disputed 2015 deal on the matter, President Moon said only a sincere apology from Tokyo will truly settle the issue. So the world has its eyes firmly fixed on a scheduled summit between the leaders of North Korea and the United States, but it appears the two sides are having rather a tough time coordinating the details of the historic meeting. While the US is taking a hardline approach to denuclearization, Pyongyang is ratcheting up criticism against the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign against the regime. Our Kim Hyo-sun tells us more.
Coordination for a summit between North Korea and the United States seems to be becoming increasingly strategic. Washington is urging Pyongyang to permanently and verifiably give up its nuclear program, substituting the word complete with permanent as it addresses the North's nuclear issue. Watchers say the change in wording signals a more hardline approach to denuclearization, which not only includes the regime's nuclear and intercontinental ballistic missiles, but also other weapons of mass destruction like chemical and biological programs. A delay in the final announcement of the date and location of the summit, as well as the repatriation of U.S. detainees in the North, also hint that the two parties are having difficulty coordinating the first-ever summit between the sitting leaders of the two countries. While the U.S. is closely coordinating with Japan on North Korea, Pyongyang has criticized Tokyo for advocating maximum pressure on the regime. The regime's external propaganda outlet Meari accused Tokyo of making hostile remarks against the North, despite its ongoing efforts to resolve the nuclear standoff on the Korean Peninsula. North Korea's foreign ministry spokesperson also warned the U.S. that continued pressure and military threats could ruin the hard-won atmosphere of dialogue and bring the situation back to square one. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, ahead of the planned North Korea-US summit, movements are being detected between North Korea and China yet again. According to well-informed North Korea sources, a high-ranking figure from the regime has been in contact with a high-level Chinese official in Dalian, a city in China's northeast. The sources raised the possibility that Beijing might have invited North Korean officials ahead of China's first homegrown aircraft carrier sea trials. Given the high level of traffic controls in the city over the past couple of days, sources in Dalian have suggested the high-ranking North Korean official may be Kim Jong-un himself, given that similar controls were in place when Kim made his secret trip to Beijing in March to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, earlier this year, the two Koreas fielded a joint women's ice hockey team at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics here in South Korea, competing under the Korean unification flag. And just last week, they competed together in the World Championships of Table Tennis. The issue of joint teams involve more than just diplomacy, we can see. They can benefit a sport or a team, but sometimes they don't. So there's a degree of reluctance, as our Won Jung-hwan reports.
Rather than facing each other in the quarterfinals of the Table Tennis World Championship in Sweden on Thursday, South and North Korea formed a joint team for the first time in 27 years. The last joint squad won the gold medal at the 1991 World Championships. In Friday's semifinals, they faced Japan but lost 3-0, sharing the bronze with Hong Kong. At the Inter-Korean Summit at Panmunjom last week, the leaders of the two Koreas agreed to jointly participate in international sports competitions, including the 2018 Asian Games, which will be held in Indonesia in August. The push for joint Korean teams at the Asian Games is gaining momentum, and many people see it as another step towards closer ties between the two Koreas. The Ministry of Sports recently asked 40 national sports federations whether they will be willing to form a unified team with North Korea at the 2018 Asian Games. 7 federations have shown an interest in the proposal, and one of the federations, canoeing, says teaming up with North Korea and Indonesia is highly likely.
Currently, neither South nor North Korea have full-time paddlers for the discipline of dragon boat. That is why we think it's a perfect discipline for the two Koreas to form a joint team, since it won't come at the expense of any athletes, unlike the women's ice hockey team at Pyeongchang.
But some sports federations appear reluctant to form a joint team. Some say forming a unified team would undermine the teamwork within the existing squad, and it will require unwanted sacrifice on the part of players whose pro careers may be at stake. And for male athletes, there's something more.
In South Korea, male athletes who win gold at the Asian Games are exempt from the country's mandatory 2-year military service. But if some athletes lose their opportunity to compete and possibly clear their military service due to the formation of a joint team, it will trigger a huge backlash from both the athletes and the sport's governing body.
There are still further issues to tackle before the two Koreas compete under one flag in Indonesia, even if South Korean sports federations have expressed their interest. But with the legacy of the women's joint ice hockey team at Pyeongchang 2018 still strong, there is a hope that more joint Korean teams can build on that legacy at the Asian Games and other upcoming sporting events. Won Jung-hwan, Arirang News.
Now, let's shift gears from sports to politics, and it's expected to be the last day of negotiations to normalise the National Assembly. Rival parties are going to meet in under 30 minutes from now to see if they can reach some sort of compromise, namely on the online opinion rigging scandal and the handling of the extra budget bill. The National Assembly Speaker has given all the parties until 2 p.m. to reach an agreement, so they have less than 4 hours to work out a compromise. For more on this, let's connect to our National Assembly correspondent Kim Min-ji, who joins us naturally from the National Assembly. So, Min-ji, we await to see the start of this crunch meeting, but how are things looking?
Mark, in about 20 minutes from now, the National Assembly Speaker will meet with the floor leaders of the country's 4 negotiating blocs. Now, the biggest issue is whether the ruling Democratic Party of Korea will accept an independent council probe into an online opinion rigging scandal that allegedly involves one of its lawmakers. An influential blogger is suspected to have used a computer program to boost the number of likes for online comments critical of the Moon Jae-in administration in a bid to smear conservatives. Now, the ruling party has indicated that it would accept the demand, but on the condition that opposition parties simultaneously vote on the government's extra budget bill during a plenary session on May 24th. But the main opposition Liberty Korea Party and the centrist Paramita Party say the probe must come first and the ruling party shouldn't link it with other issues. So all eyes will be on whether parties will be able to reach a last-minute deal. The National Assembly Speaker has set a deadline of 2 p.m. today, like you said, so in less than 4 hours from now. He leaves for an overseas trip on Wednesday, and both his term and the floor leader of the ruling party's term come to an end this month. But a compromise looks like it may be difficult, with the ruling party saying it won't make any further concessions, and the main opposition also saying they won't budge unless the probe is accepted, no strings attached. But there's also a belief that some sort of breakthrough is possible, as a standstill has been in place for over a month, and there's pressure on the National Assembly, having gotten nothing done during that time.
So it's that time in the newscast where we take a look at the stories making headlines around the world. And today we're going to start in Russia. Vladimir Putin launched his fourth term as president on Monday, extending his 18-year rule. Also, as widely expected, Putin put his longtime associate, Dmitry Medvedev, to continue as prime minister. He's expected to be confirmed on this Tuesday. For more on this and other international news, let's turn to our Arirang. Arirang, Putin has a lot of challenges on his plate, especially amid tensions with the West, and he also has the issue of rising domestic anger over poverty.
That's right, Mark. Putin was sworn in at a lavish ceremony at the Grand Kremlin Palace after winning more than 70% of the vote in presidential elections 2 months ago. Speaking after the inauguration, Putin vowed to improve living standards and to breathe life back into Russia's stagnant economy.
But now, we must use all the opportunities available. First of all, to reach the internal, the most essential development goals for the economic technology breakthrough, for raising competitive ability in those spheres which determine the future. A new quality of life, a well-being, security, and health of a person are the most important. These are the issues at the center of our policy.
His pledge comes at a time when the Russian people are increasingly showing discontent over the country's economy and increasing wage gap. More than 1,000 people across the country were arrested over the weekend after anti-Putin protests turned violent. His drive to the inauguration along a completely blocked-off road also seemed to show he had lost touch with the public.
If I'm honest, I'm ashamed of what is happening here in Russia. And specifically for today's inauguration, from the morning, everything was totally blocked up. Police were everywhere, and the inauguration it should be. If you compare it with the inaugurations of democratic countries, here I saw no joy or happiness in this moment.
Besides restoring the Russian people's trust, Putin also has the task of building trust with the West. Relations with the US and Europe especially have reached a near Cold War low, mostly due to Russia's alleged meddling in Western elections, the poisoning of a former Russian spy in Britain, as well as Moscow's support for the Assad regime in Syria. Despite the setbacks, however, Putin seemed optimistic, saying Russia has always revived itself like a phoenix. The Trump administration will announce its decision on whether the United States will pull out of the Iran nuclear deal on Tuesday. Trump tweeted that he will make the announcement at 2 p.m. Eastern Time from the White House. He has long threatened to pull out of the 2015 deal, which lifted certain economic sanctions on Iran in exchange for curbs on Tehran's nuclear program. The announcement comes ahead of the May 12th deadline, in which he has to decide whether to continue the sanctions waiver or leave the agreement. The Kilauea volcano in Hawaii has destroyed more than 35 homes and other buildings as it continued to spew lava on Monday, 4 days after it first erupted. More than 1,700 people on Big Island, which was also struck by a magnitude 6.9 earthquake on Friday, have been told to evacuate. Toxic gas is also coming out of about 10 volcanic vents, known as fissures, which have opened since Thursday's eruption. Officials say that no deaths or major injuries have been reported so far. Nestle, the world's largest food and beverage company, says it will pay Starbucks $7.1 billion in cash to sell the coffee giant's products in retail outlets outside of Starbucks chains. The deal gives Swiss-based Nestle the rights to market, sell and distribute bags of Starbucks coffee beans, instant coffee as well as teas. But the agreement does not include bottled drinks such as iced coffees and frappuccinos, which are already sold in and outside Starbucks stores. Starbucks CEO Kevin Johnson called the deal a global coffee alliance, adding it will bring the Starbucks experience to the homes of millions more around the world. It needs to be approved by regulators and is expected to be finalized later this year.
Now, another large Chinese city has decided to lift its sales ban on package tour programs to South Korea amid the thawing relations between Seoul and Beijing. The two sides fell out rather badly in 2016 over South Korea's deployment of a US anti-missile system. Lee Seung-jae with the details.
The rift over the deployment of the US THAAD missile defense system in South Korea had brought Chinese group tours to the south to a virtual halt since 2016, following Beijing's retaliatory sales ban. However, it seems relations are finally beginning to normalize. This after a second Chinese city announced it was reopening group tour package program to South Korea. China's Ministry of Culture and Tourism held a regional meeting in the southwestern city of Chongqing over the weekend to approve the decision. It comes just a week after Wuhan, the sprawling capital of Hubei province, became the first Chinese city to reopen sales of group tour packages to South Korea. The neighboring countries began recovering bilateral exchanges in affected areas, including tourism, entertainment, and other commercial sectors, following President Moon Jae-in's summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing in December last year. In a sign things are steadily returning to normal, the number of Chinese visitors to South Korea passed the 400,000 threshold in March for the first time since February 2017. Observers attribute the rising tourist numbers to an improvement in bilateral relations, coupled with South Korea's successful hosting of the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea and China held their first working-level defence talks in over 2 years on Monday, following their suspension amid the row over Seoul's deployment of the US THAAD missile defence system. Seoul's defence ministry said it explained the outcomes of the recent inter-Korean summit to its Chinese counterpart, adding that the two sides also discussed plans for defence cooperation and exchanges. South Korea also reportedly brought up Chinese military planes' repeated violation of the nation's air defence identification zone. Korean tennis sensation Jung Hyun continues to edge his way up the world rankings, rising one spot to 21st. The 22-year-old, who made it all the way to the last four of the BMW Open in Germany last weekend, had been ranked world number 22 for the past 5 weeks. Jung came to the world's attention earlier this year following his spectacular run to the semi-finals of the Australian Open. Now, a lot of people worry about the radiation we're exposed to when we get X-rays and CT scans. For that reason, Korean researchers have been working on a new way to look inside the body without having to resort to using light waves. Park Se-young with more.
Being able to safely and accurately look inside the body is essential for both diagnosis and treatment of diseases. Light can provide high-resolution images without harming the body, but light's trajectory is easily scattered and diffused. Now, Korean researchers have found a strategy to maximize the intensity of the waves that interact with the target over the waves that do not, based on the time it takes for the waves to travel to the target and be reflected back. After selecting the correct wavelengths, the researchers shoot the light toward the target once again to maximize efficiency.
After analyzing the characteristics of light waves that interact with the target object, we developed a technique that increases the efficiency by using a special pattern of light.
When the scientists applied the technique to a mouse skull, it demonstrated a more than 10-fold improvement of light energy delivered to targets compared to current optical imaging. The team expects the method to increase the efficiency of disease control and hopes to apply to nerve cells, bone marrow, and brain tissue of animals and humans. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now, although South Korea might be one of the world's most urbanized countries, a small but growing number of people in their 20s and 30s are choosing to leave the city and live quiet but hard-working lives as farmers. And to encourage them, rural towns have started holding classes to teach these disillusioned city dwellers about their new career. Our Jo Sang-min with more.
Amid the hustle and bustle of daily life in the city, an increasing number of people in their 20s and 30s are choosing an unexpected path, that of farming over desk jobs. According to government data, more than 10,000 people annually are either heading or returning to the countryside since 2015. To follow up with the trend, rural communities have started to offer free classes aimed at instructing young newcomers about farming techniques, equipment, and know-hows, and Gyeonggi-do Province is one of them. Since last year, the province has been running a 7-month curriculum with at least 10 hours of lessons per month. The lessons are proving to be very popular, with many participants asking for more similar lessons on other agricultural topics.
I had no expertise and experience when I first started, but the class navigated the road for me and made me confident about my work.
The number of programs and activities related to farming and harvesting has increased as of recent to cater to the growing demand. While there are full-time programs aimed to train farmers to be, there are also less demanding programs that allow participants to learn about the rewards of being a farmer in gradual steps. For instance, an annual program which kicks off in every April offers participants, mostly retirees, the chance to grow, maintain, and harvest agricultural products in a customized piece of land of 12 square meters. The program is popular since the participants can have farming experience while still living in an urban zone. Industry experts believe holding such programs has helped promote another way of life to wider audiences that transcends gender, background, and age. Jo Sang-min, Arirang News.
Good morning. Ideal spring weather is expected on this Parents' Day here in Korea, and southern regions will also see bright skies. Rain brought the temperatures down in the southern regions over the extended weekend, and there will be another breezy afternoon today with highs hovering way below the seasonal averages. And Seoul and Daejeon will get up to 22 degrees Celsius this afternoon, while Gyeongju will only make it to 16 degrees this afternoon, but the air quality will be normal to good. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So bright skies with pleasant weather conditions are in the forecast for most of South Korea, while parts of North Korea will be under plenty of sunshine with warm daily highs. Meanwhile, partly cloudy skies are in the forecast for Bangkok, along with high humidity levels. Over in New Zealand, a storm is brewing south of New Zealand. It will bring heavy rain and potentially damaging winds with 8-meter waves hitting the coastline. And heading to North America, it's going to be a great spring week in the DC area. And as for South America, Rio de Janeiro has not seen the sunshine for a few days, and more showers are expected on Tuesday. Taking you to Europe, those in Paris should enjoy a sunny and warm Tuesday. Rain tomorrow will bring big drop in the temperatures. Lastly, to Africa, despite the forecast indicating that the rains are coming to Cape Town, there are weather warnings in place for potential forest fires and high winds. And that's all the weather update for now.
Well, that's all the news we have for now on this Tuesday morning here in Seoul. If you're watching us in Korea, remember that today is a Tuesday, not a Monday. It feels kind of like a Monday, considering we had that long weekend. But just a reminder as well that our next news bulletin is coming up at its regular time of noon Korea times. Until then, goodbye.